That picture says it all. Our next conversation is on the importance of addressing mental health within the context of fatherhood. You know, fathers, like everyone else, you know, they have their own emotions, and but a lot of the times the focus is on the women, the women and the children. But this morning we are focusing on fathers, and we have in the house a family therapist, Amina Yunus Ali. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
It's an amazing time. Thank you for having me once again.
Mm-hmm. So let's focus on the men. You know, they always accuse women of Mother's Day, International Women's Day, but let's focus on them. Of course, just a few days ago, it was International Men's Day. So let's put the focus on them and in the context of fatherhood.
Yeah, so like somebody said, I read someone's status a couple of days back, and she was like, "Were men expecting us to celebrate them?" We have always been the one hyping our own Women's Day, Girl Child Day, and all that. But I think in the context of understanding fatherhood and mental health, and there's so many unspoken burdens that fathers bear, it would be nice to once in a while to help them understand that we do care about them as well. And I think talking about their affect when it comes to how they present themselves in fatherhood is an important part of making a whole family. We cannot dismiss their presence when it comes to how they show up for the children, how they show up even for the mothers themselves, and how that would greatly impact the overall well-being of the family. But it's also important for us to once in a while shine the light on them as humans, as individuals.
Particularly in our own climb, you hear that, be a man up, and
suck it up.
You're not supposed to show emotions, but
no, but you see, I think that's one of the things that is making this idea of a whole parenting difficult to grasp for so many men, because they've watched years and years, generations over generations. My grandfather did it this way, my father did it this way, and it had to be man up, hide your emotions, take care of yourself privately without letting your partner know what's going on and all that. So it's been difficult for them to come up into the space of vulnerability and sharing and compassion and saying, oh, okay, so I'm struggling with this. What exactly do I do here? Or I don't know how to begin to parent compassionately, because it's strange to them. All they've ever been told to be a man, as a father, protect, preserve, provide. Yes. It doesn't seem to go beyond that. So when it now goes into sharing your emotions, sharing your day, sharing your dreams and aspirations with your entire family, it becomes a strange space for them to bear. And, it's unfortunate, but it's the reality. And in this day and age of relocation and migration, it's even more turbulent than before.
But you must agree that now that traditional picture of the man in the home is changing.
Absolutely.
And that is because many more women are going out to work. So it's not just one person contributing to the home purse.
Yeah.
It is two persons. So the burden is maybe marginally reduced on the man. So the traditional role of being the protector, the provider, and whatever else you said is changing gradually. And then, of course, more and more we're seeing cases of absentee fathers. We're seeing more and more single mothers.
Absolutely. There is that in terms of this landscape of parenting. Two-income households now bear the provision aspect of being parents. But it's also interesting to see that the dynamics of relationship doesn't seem to change much. Right? It's still the expectation of, I'm still going to expect my man to take care of the shelter, take care of the school bills, take care of the major bills, right?
Basic things.
Exactly. Right? But when it comes down to it, the landscape of the relationship doesn't seem to have changed that much, because now it is even more that you rarely have the wife to come home and sit down to and say, let's gist and talk and have quality time. So the idea of quality time, where you most likely in the olden days have found maybe a rickety rocking chair outside of the building where daddy would sit, and then mommy has a stool beside him, and they are just talking about the day and the children's school fees and everything. They have their own intimate time. Doesn't seem to happen anymore, because the wife is also tired. She's exhausted after driving hours in traffic. She's exhausted taking care of the family and having to think about what will they have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it has to be a balanced meal. She's exhausted, But again, it is to see that, you see, these men also, even though they don't complain, because it will seem like they don't complain that much, even though they don't complain, they also struggle with manhood. They struggle with, how can I show up effectively as a man to my family? What does my girl child want from me that would make me seem like a man? Is it for me to be all macho, or is it for me to ask her, what kind of prom dress are you going to wear, for instance? Or is it that my wife needs me once in a while to hold her hand when she's not even asking, because she's not even there, so I don't know? And sometimes for them this is a new terrain for us to navigate. And being a man seems to be changing with every definition of what womanhood is. So it's a struggle for them to catch up. And that unspoken burden comes from a space of, how do I navigate this effectively without losing my essence of what my great ancestors, who have been fathers for long, have told me to be a man is? How do I shift this definition of a vulnerable man who is whole and hearty and acceptable and seemingly compassionate, without still losing my voice as an authority with
the home.
In the home, right? And it's challenging, but it's doable. It still comes to that sense of when we say, oh, men love respect.
Okay,
but
so
who doesn't?
Who should the man be looking up to for this? Is it for him to look within himself, or from the people around him, his partner, his wife,
I think we have models, male models out there who have successfully navigated this terrain, but maybe they do not talk out as much as we want them to. And this would be a fantastic time for them to show up, because more and more we're having the Gen Zs, so to speak, the 20-year-olds and the 30-year-olds who are coming into that space of fatherhood a little bit earlier than even some of us did when we were growing up. And they are beginning to wonder, like, was this the way it was always is, and is there something that needs to change? I think the male models that have successfully navigated, or perhaps met a few bumps in the road and learned over time, should come up and begin to say, well, yeah, this is a tough act to follow, but you can do it, and these are the things you need to learn. I believe strongly that by the time that our men begin to speak with each other, not just about balls and businesses, not just about footballs and golf balls and things like that, but also about emotions and how to carry it effectively within the home. Instead of masking your fear as anger, or masking your loss as hatred and resentment towards your family, it is possible for you to really have a discussion. And I think it's also important for our women to begin to be receptive of men who are vulnerable, because that's another thing that we don't talk about. We talk about absentee fathers, right? But we don't talk about women who can't stand men who are vulnerable. There is a bit of that happens too, because if your man was supposed to cry in front of you, like, what do I do here now? What do I say to this man? You're confused when you begin to see emotions coming from a man, because we weren't taught that also. But communication works.
Do you think that
communication
men
works?
Turn out the way they are because of the expectations of the women? And I'm taking that from what you just said. So the woman is taken aback when her husband begins to cry.
Yeah.
I mean, so what's wrong with a man crying? He's human.
Yeah.
So we expect them not to cry. So they pretend to be strong because it is what we expect.
Exactly. And because they also have an expectation of how their emotions are meant to be met in that similar situation. So
is it
a woman who hasn't ever seen her father cry,
yes,
or seen affection shared between her mother and father, now comes home and finds her man sitting down, heads down, tears streaming down, the first thing she experiences in that moment is, where is this coming from? What have I done? Because she hasn't experienced. She may have experienced this with friends or peers of her age, but this is her intimate moment with her husband, and she's going like, what's going on here? What do I do in this instance? And for him, it's also the question of, how do you need your emotions to be met? So I often tell couples this, look, there's the fix me conversation when emotions are involved, and there is the hear me conversation when emotions are involved. But it all depends on your body language. So if my head is down and tears are just streaming down, that is not the time for you to ask what is going on. That's most likely the time to just sit still and have that space with that person and just listen. It's called shared space or safe space. In that moment, you do not want to begin to ask, what did you do? What happened? How can I, what do you want me to do in this moment? And if in the space of the person holds your hand and says, darling, something just happened at work today and I'm really devastated. Your first concern isn't so much as, hey, does that mean that you
still have your job?
Thank you.
I hope you still have your job.
Your first concern isn't how, if the person has his or her job, it's like, are you okay? What do you need right now? And not very many men get that back from their spouses because, again, they've had to wear this cloak of, I fix everything.
Yeah.
I take care of everything. Everything is going to be fine because I am here. So it is a really delicate space to be in. But when we do have that space shared with them, I think it helps them to also wear the cloak a little bit better, because there's someone there that is adjusting the cape and making you feel like you're not doing this alone, I'm here with you. And it's something that we have to reiterate and we have to show by, example. So you asked something, do our men have models to show this to them? I think they do, but we just don't find them often enough, maybe online, saying, well, this is what it means to be a man in this space. What we more often than not, we most likely see is men who are coming to salute their women and saying, my wife is doing a lot. But in the space of balance, we need to have also men who are advocating for men and women who are advocating for men and helping them share their burden.
So will we do better by actually letting the men know that we do understand that they're human and that whatever happens, we're going to be there for them, that it is okay for them to actually show their emotion? It is not, there's nothing wrong with it. They're human.
Yeah.
So if we allowed them to be human around us,
can we bear it? Interestingly, I was thinking back now, and I remember that my very first parenting clients were a couple of men who were concerned about, one was concerned about his son, the other was concerned about his daughter. And it was always that I'm struggling with how my child is being in this space. But if I talk about it, my wife is like, don't worry about it, you worry too much. Right? So it does seem like in some space of time, we've taken over how men are supposed to care in parenting, or how men are supposed to show this emotion. There's a level that has to be acceptable. Somebody once asked, like, okay, so if I tell you right now that I'm angry and I'm really showing my anger, can you sit down there and accept my anger? Wouldn't you say, oh, but it's enough so that you don't go overboard? And that is what it means. But if it were a woman and sitting on this table and saying, I'm really angry and tears are streaming down our face, we come and say, oh, I'm really sorry that you're having to go through this. Anger,
And you
same
give them a
emotions.
hug.
And then we give them a hug. But if a man is showing the anger, we chastise and we say no. Like they have no right whatsoever to that emotion, or they are going to go overboard, and the woman or the people around are the ones that are going to be hurt. But it's also important for us to see that anger that they're expressing is an information of their state of mind that is also requesting compassion in that moment. Can we hold it?
And
can we contain it?
If you offer that compassion, you just might get pushed away.
Because it's not common. It's not a common ground. It's not a common space for me to say I'm angry, and then the next thing is you want to hug me. It's more often for me to say, okay, I hear you. I know you're angry, but is there something you want me to do or say in this moment? And in that space, the mind is like, why is she being understanding? I need you to kind of like fight me back and push me so that I can express how deeply I am feeling. So it's a learning. So I think it starts with the boys, teaching the boys right now what it means to hold their emotions, express their emotions, share their emotions.
And the confines of, not going overboard.
Not going overboard is subjective, really, if you ask me. If I were to hold a pillow to my face and I'm screaming and you just walk in without knowing what I'm doing is a power scream. In that moment, it's me unleashing all the angers and all the pain that I've held. That's why I said it's subjective. But it's also in that space of, helping our men to help them hear it over and over again until they believe it, that their emotions matter. Like, Daddy, I said to my daughter, Daddy's having a hard time. And she says, what does that mean? Like, okay, Daddy is going through some things right now. We just need to be quiet and allow him to feel his feelings. Oh, you mean we should just sit with him? And I say, yeah, we can sit with him to let him feel his feelings. She goes, okay, yeah. But, that's like a very clean scenario in that space. Can I allow him to feel his feelings when he's angry or when he is hurt in her presence? That's a different conversation, because, again, this is not something that I'm used to. And this is the same thing that goes in many households. Like, when we talk about emotions, we think it is feminine. We think it's okay for the women to feel their emotions. But when it comes to our men, when it comes to them being fathers and still holding their emotions or sharing their emotions, do we still see them in that light? Can you go back to your husband after a really bad breakdown to say, still the man of this house? And would he believe you in that moment? So it's a continuous conversation that requires a lot of compassion, and I think the more we say it, the more they hear it.
The one that is also coming to my mind now is about, of course, pregnancy, period, and for women there are books to read. You're expecting your first child, all that you need to know. And is there one for fathers or fathers to be?
There are a couple, but it's another time for you to find them on the bookshelf. So
maybe online.
Maybe online.
Antenatal.
We do parenting courses, and we asked, and you probably find the ratio of 15 women to 1 man. So even that 1 man is wondering, am I in the right room right now?
So should we encourage that even for antenatal? Maybe not every time, but let the men also come so that they know what to expect. So when your wife is behaving this way, maybe for in labor, you know what to do too.
Yeah, we do ask them to show up for those antenatal, prenatal classes, but again, it goes back to, did my father do those things? Marriage counseling, as simple as, as important as marriage counseling is, you still find a lot of men say, well, my father was a very important man in his household, and he didn't go through marriage counseling. Did Jesus go through marriage counseling? Did Muhammad go through marriage counseling? Or did they teach it as a class? And these are things that, again, it comes from a space of, I'm afraid. What I hear when I hear such sentences is, I'm afraid that this is just going to change me from being the man to the house. And it's about losing this essence of masculinity that actually makes them
down.
Yeah, to make them feel like, they are what we would call woman rapper. And make them feel less important in the home. But we shouldn't also take it away from them that, some are actually trying, some are showing up as much as they can, some are struggling with it, this new idea of being fathers in this digital age, because again, they do know that the war out there is not so much as the wars of guns and swords, is as much as it is about intellectual agility and mental serenity as much as possible. So for them, it's how do I do this and still be the man?
Okay, I think this is a conversation that should always be on the table, not just about the women, but of course the men. Thank you so much, family therapist Amina Yunus Ali.
Thank you for
sharing your thoughts with us this morning.
Yeah.
And Sunrise will be back for the home stretch. We have an opera singer in the house. To stay with us.